What if everything you've been told about transformation is wrong? That it doesn't take months of work, years of healing, or endless rituals, but a single shift so subtle most people miss it entirely. And the reason you haven't changed yet isn't because it's hard, it's because it's too simple. The threshold of simplicity. You probably think it takes months, maybe years of effort, healing, and visualization before you can experience a real transformation. The common story goes like this. Breakthroughs are earned through suffering. Alignment comes only after mastering every spiritual technique. And clarity is a reward for endless struggle. But what if that entire narrative is backwards? What if the real shift, the actual quantum leap, doesn't arrive after years of grinding, but in a single, almost invisible moment? A moment so subtle that most people miss it entirely. Because contrary to what your mind believes, the field doesn't respond to complexity, effort, or how much you've earned. It responds to clarity, and clarity is nearly always found in simplicity. The hidden pattern. Before transformation. Look closely at the lives of those who have shifted dramatically. You'll notice something surprising. Their breakthrough didn't happen when they tried harder. It didn't happen when they repeated more affirmations, or when they collected another method to add to their toolbox. It happened when something inside of them stopped. They stopped forcing. They stopped chasing. They stopped doubting their worth. And in that instant of stillness, something in the field reorganized. The signal changed. It's almost paradoxical. We think alignment is about adding knowledge, adding rituals, adding effort. But the field doesn't mirror addition. It mirrors coherence, and coherence emerges when the noise drops away. So here's the first truth. Simplicity is not the enemy of transformation. It's the gateway. Yet this is the very thing the ego cannot stand. The resistance to ease. Have you ever noticed the strange discomfort that arises when things start to flow too easily? Perhaps you finally felt momentum, and a voice inside whispered, "This can't be right. It's too simple. Something must be wrong." That's the conditioning of a culture addicted to struggle. We glorify effort. We worship complexity. We equate value with difficulty. If something feels easy, we assume it must be undeserved. But the quantum field does not care how hard you've worked. It's not measuring your hours, your sweat, or your sacrifice. It's vibrating with your current identity. And the identity the field recognizes is the one you embody, not the one you're striving toward. This is why the simplest moments, the ones where you stop resisting, stop overthinking, and simply allow yourself to be, are the most dangerous to the ego. Because if it really is simple, then what was all the struggle for? What does that mean for the identity you built around effort, proving, and fixing? Simplicity strips away the drama. The false self thrives on drama. Complexity gives it something to hide behind. If the process is complicated, then you can explain why you're not there yet. You can blame the method, the steps, the timing. But when things are simple, there's nowhere to hide. The spotlight turns inward. Suddenly, the question isn't whether the method works, but whether you are truly willing to embody what you already know. This is why most people unconsciously sabotage their shifts. Not because they're broken, not because they're unworthy, but because they're afraid of how quiet the truth really is. They expect lightning. They get stillness. They want fireworks. The field offers silence. Yet in that silence, the shift lives. The quantum mirror. The quantum field is always mirroring you. It's not waiting for your next mantra or technique. It's broadcasting your signal back to you continuously. And the moment you stop adjusting your frequency to match your circumstances and instead hold your tone regardless of external validation, something radical happens. This is the moment the distinction between manifesting and shifting becomes clear. Manifesting often comes from lack. I don't have this, therefore I must attract it. But shifting is different. Shifting means becoming the version of you that already exists in another timeline. You're not creating it. You're aligning with it. The separation between where you are now and the reality you desire isn't time. It isn't effort. It's frequency. And here's the question most people avoid. What if your shift isn't hard, but just unfamiliar? What if you've been trying to think your way into a new timeline when the real doorway is felt, not thought? Blind spots, the unseen filters. This brings us to the first real barrier. Blind spots. These are not flaws, but patterns you're too close to recognize. They are the reflexive stories you've repeated so often they feel like truth. And while your mind may be visualizing abundance, your unconscious signal may still be coded in scarcity. Not because you're not trying, but because you've never paused to question the emotional frequency you broadcast when no one is watching. So ask yourself, what's the climate of your inner world when you're not doing the work? When you're not visualizing or meditating? What vibration lingers in the background? That's your true signal. That's what the field is hearing. Awareness, the first mastery skill. So the first skill in quantum shifting isn't effort, it's awareness. Not the kind of awareness that journals endlessly or analyzes itself to exhaustion, but the kind of awareness that watches your thoughts as they rise, without judgment. It's the awareness that notices when you're reacting from survival, but chooses not to collapse into it. This is subtle work, but it's the most powerful. Because awareness interrupts the loop, and once the loop is interrupted, the field can begin to mirror something new. Radical responsibility, the frequency cleanser. The second skill is radical responsibility. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for every challenge. It means claiming the signal you're emitting. When you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this showing me about my resonance?" the field starts to reorganize. Victimhood is loud but incoherent. Ownership is quiet but magnetic. The paradox of simplicity. And here lies the paradox. The field responds most powerfully, not when you strive, but when you surrender. Not when you force, but when you feel. Simplicity is terrifying to the ego because it removes the excuses. If alignment is simple, then nothing is blocking you, except your own attachment to complexity. But here's the secret. Simplicity isn't emptiness. It's power. It's the raw signal stripped of static. And when you hold that signal, the universe has no choice but to mirror it. Preparing for the next threshold. In the next chapter, we'll explore the strange tension that arises right before a true shift. That liminal space where the old identity begins to dissolve, but the new one hasn't fully anchored. Most people misinterpret this space as failure. They retreat, they hustle harder, or they give up entirely. But when you understand what's truly happening, you'll see this space for what it really is: calibration. The old frequency is disassembling, making space for the new one to land. And if you can recognize it, you'll realize that the chaos is not the end. It's the doorway. So, let me leave you with this. What if the shift you've been chasing is already here, waiting not for more effort, but for your willingness to let it be simple? Science tells us that nothing is solid. Spirituality whispers that nothing is separate. Together, They reveal a truth we can no longer ignore. Reality is not fixed. It is fluid, responsive, alive. When you strike a bell, the sound vibrates through the air. When you drop a pebble into a pond, ripples spread in every direction. What physics now confirms is that your very thoughts and emotions ripple in the same way, not through water, not through air, but through the quantum field itself. This is not philosophy. It is not wishful thinking. It is the observer effect. In the famous double-slit experiment, light behaved differently depending on whether it was being watched. When no one observed, photons acted like waves, pure potential, infinite possibilities. But the moment attention was directed, they collapsed into particles, into form, into matter, into reality. Pause for a moment and let this sink in. Reality itself responds to observation, to awareness, to consciousness. And if this is true on the smallest level of existence, what does it mean for you? Living, breathing, thinking, feeling consciousness. It means that every thought you repeat, every belief you carry, every emotion you radiate is not just happening inside your head. It is echoing into the field of infinite potential, collapsing possibilities into outcomes, sculpting the reality you wake up in each morning. This is why struggle often feels endless. When you fight your circumstances with fear or frustration, you are still observing through the lens of lack. You are watching the same movie over and over, expecting it to change, while your very act of attention keeps it alive. But here is the paradox. The quantum field is infinite. It holds every version of you, every possible timeline, every imaginable future. From the wealth you dream of, to the healing you crave, to the love you believe has passed you by, it is all there, vibrating in potential. So why do we stay stuck in one narrow version of reality? Because most of us have been trained to look only at what is. We measure life by appearances, not possibilities. We worship the evidence of the senses, while ignoring the infinite that lies just beyond them. Science calls it measurement. Spirituality calls it belief. But they both point to the same law. What you focus on becomes solid. What you turn away from remains fluid. Imagine a radio. If you tune it to one frequency, you hear jazz. Switch the dial, and suddenly it's classical. The airwaves hold them all simultaneously, but your receiver decides which becomes real to your ears. Your consciousness is that receiver. Your focus is the dial. And the quantum field is the invisible ocean of frequencies waiting for you to choose. The moment you realize this, you stop being a passive observer and become a deliberate creator. But let's go even deeper. Why does emotion matter so much? Why isn't thought alone enough? Because thought is the signal, but emotion is the power. A weak thought without feeling is like a radio station with no electricity, silent, unnoticed. But when thought and emotion align, when your inner vision is fueled by gratitude, joy, or certainty, you amplify the signal into the field. You become magnetic. Neuroscience supports this. Every emotion generates measurable electromagnetic fields around your body. HeartMath Institute, for example, discovered that the heart produces an electromagnetic field thousands of times stronger than the brain, which means when you feel, you broadcast. And when you broadcast, the field responds. Now the question becomes, what are you broadcasting every day? If you wake in fear, the field mirrors fear. If you walk in resentment, it reflects resentment. But if, even for a moment, you choose coherence, gratitude, peace, love, the field must rearrange itself to reflect that frequency. This is not abstract, it is mechanical. Reality is less like stone and more like clay, shaped by attention, molded by resonance, sculpted by state of being. The spiritual traditions have always known this. Mystics called it as within, so without. Scriptures whispered, "It is done unto you as you believe." But now, physics joins the choir. The invisible is not empty. It is alive with possibility. And this leads us to the hidden key. Transformation is not about forcing the outer world to bend. It is about tuning your inner world so precisely that, think of a singer shattering glass. She does not touch it, push it, or smash it. She simply aligns her voice with the natural frequency of the glass until it cannot remain what it was. The structure collapses, and something new must emerge. You are the singer. Your reality is that glass, and the frequency you choose is the song that determines what stays and what breaks. The quantum shift is not distant. It is not gradual. It is not earned through endless struggle. It is immediate, because the field responds instantly to coherence. But coherence cannot be faked. You cannot say, "I am abundant," while feeling lack. You cannot chant, "I am free," while vibrating fear. The field listens not to words, but to resonance. This is why most attempts at change fail. People speak the language of desire, but radiate the frequency of doubt. The words are particles, but the emotions remain waves. The signal never collapses into form. So the invitation is simple, but radical. Stop waiting for proof and become the proof. Stop demanding evidence and generate the state first. Align your heart and mind with the reality you choose, not the one you see. Because here lies the secret. The field does not give you what you want. It gives you what you are. The silent revolution. Within there comes a point in every seeker's journey where they realize the shift was never about becoming something more. It was always about remembering what had been there all along. The irony is almost cosmic. While we've been climbing mountains of knowledge, chasing experiences, and collecting practices, the essence of transformation has been waiting patiently in the silence between thoughts. This silence is not empty. It is not absence. It is the living field itself, an intelligence woven into every particle, every photon, every breath you've ever taken. When you enter it, even for a fraction of a second, your nervous system reorganizes. Your perception clears. Time bends. Suddenly, what felt impossible becomes effortless, not because reality has changed, but because you are no longer distorting it. The collapse of the old self. Every quantum shift carries with it a collapse, the collapse of the self you thought you had to be. This is why it can feel so disorienting at first. Your mind will resist. It will insist that change must come through struggle, through pain, through earning your way to a higher level. But this is a relic of the old paradigm. The truth is that nature itself never struggles to transform. A star does not resist its own supernova. A seed does not argue with the soil before it cracks open into a sprout. Why should you? The collapse is not your destruction. It is the dissolution of the illusion that you were ever separate from the field. Integration, living the shift. So how do you carry this into daily life? Integration does not mean building a new cage out of spiritual ideas. It means allowing the shift to ripple through the ordinary moments. The way you eat, the way you walk, the way you speak to someone in passing. You begin to notice that life itself is the practice. Every sensation becomes feedback from the field. Every emotion is not an obstacle, but an invitation. Fear becomes a doorway. Joy becomes a guide. Even resistance becomes sacred, because it shows you where you still believe in separation. This is where the real mastery begins, not in the rare peak moments of transcendence, but in the quiet continuity of living with awareness. A quantum shift is not something you visit. It becomes the ground you stand on. The hidden power of awareness. Science has only begun to glimpse the power of consciousness to shape matter. The double-slit experiment, quantum entanglement, observer effects, all hint at the same truth. The act of awareness itself influences reality. But the mystics have always known this. The sages, the shamans, the seers, they spoke of the world as dreamlike, pliable, responsive. What if awareness is not just passive observation, but active participation? What if every thought, every feeling, every subtle frequency you carry is sending ripples through the field? And what if the only thing keeping you small is your refusal to see that your inner state has always been the hidden script behind your outer life? This is the moment you realize awareness is not weak. It is not passive. It is the most creative force in the universe. The point of no return. Once you glimpse the truth, you cannot unsee it. Once you feel the shift, you cannot go back to pretending that life is random, that you are powerless, that you are trapped by circumstances. There is no going back to sleep. This is the point of no return every awakened soul eventually crosses. It can feel frightening at first, like stepping off the edge of a cliff with no ground in sight. But soon, you realize the ground was never meant to hold you. The field itself carries you. This is not about abandoning life. It's about entering life fully for the first time. It's about laughing more, creating more, loving without fear, and speaking truth without calculation. Because when the shift stabilizes, authenticity becomes effortless. You are no longer playing roles. You are no longer surviving. You are radiating. The invitation. So here is the invitation. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the perfect practice, the perfect moment, or the perfect version of yourself. The field does not require perfection. It requires presence. Right now, in this very breath, you can let go. You can step into the silence. You can allow the collapse of the old self and feel the vastness of who you've always been. Do not underestimate the subtlety of this choice. It won't announce itself with fireworks. It won't feel dramatic. It will feel like home. And from this home, everything begins to realign. Your body, your relationships, your path, your future. This is the hidden revolution, not one that happens out there in the world, but one that begins within you. Closing vision. Imagine looking back on your life from a place beyond time. You will see that every struggle was a teacher, every delay was protection, every failure was guidance. You will see that nothing was wasted, because it all prepared you for this recognition. And in that recognition, you will know the truth. You were never separate, never powerless, never broken. You were always the field in motion, consciousness playing with form. This is the quantum shift. Not an idea, not a technique, but a remembering. The doorway has always been open. The only question is, will you walk through?